Police officers earn their living combating crime and investigating mysteries. But what happens when they are the victims and the subject of their own unresolved case? Generally, when a police officer is implicated in a tough crime or unexplained event, the authorities prioritise dealing with the case, but they don't always get an outcome. Here are 5 mysterious cases in which police officers were the victims. Some of them possibly involve paranormal events, and none of them has ever been resolved or explained. Number 5. Alan Godfrey. At around 5 a.m. on November the 28th, 1980, Constable Alan Godfrey of the West Yorkshire Metropolitan Police Force in Northern England was driving along a wet country road in order to investigate a report of straying cattle. That same night, he later heard 3 other police officers had witnessed a large blue pulsating ball moving erratically below storm clouds. Soon after, near the town of Todmorden, Godfrey observed a huge diamond-shaped flying object hovering and rotating and blocking the road ahead. Godfrey tried to draw the object but was suddenly blinded by an intensely bright flash, then found he had travelled more than 20 metres down the road. The flying object had disappeared, leaving a large circular dry spot with broken branches in the middle of the road. On his return to the nearby police station, Godfrey was astonished to find that he'd lost about 30 minutes out of his life without any memory of what had happened. A lot of other strange occurrences accompanied Godfrey's encounter. The missing cattle were soon located in a field with a locked gate, but with no hoof prints to show how they got there. Soon after Godfrey's abduction, his wife miraculously conceived, despite a previous work injury which had rendered him incapable of fathering more children. His sighting came 5 months after his discovery of the body of a man named Zygmunt Adamski in a Todmorden coal yard. While Adamski's official cause of death was heart failure, he had been missing for 5 days without any trace or explanation, and was also believed to have been abducted by aliens. Godfrey was relieved to later hear that 5 other police officers and 2 civilians had also witnessed a UFO that night, so it was obviously something he had not imagined. Godfrey underwent regression hypnosis, where he described meeting with alien beings inside a spacecraft. As happens with many people who report UFOs and abductions, who are in positions of authority, he was eventually harassed out of his job. The police force officially denied the sightings, despite widespread publicity at the time. However, Godfrey adamantly stands by his story of what he experienced. Number 4. Mel Wiley. Mel Wiley was appointed police chief of Hinckley Township, Ohio in 1982 after a long career in law enforcement. However, eerily, 3 years later, the 47-year-old Wiley would vanish without a trace. This also happened 3 years before his planned retirement at the age of 50 in order to pursue a career in writing. He had already written a book of poetry and was working on a detective novel. Wiley had recently told someone that he was intending to purchase a swimsuit and go swimming in Lake Erie with an unidentified acquaintance. He was last seen on July the 28th, 1985, and 2 days later his abandoned station wagon was found at Lakefront State Park, Lake Erie, in Cleveland. In the car was a small amount of cash, credit cards, ID, and some personal items, and it was later established that he had neither brought the swimsuit or gone swimming, which he did not enjoy anyway. When investigators checked his apartment, there was no indication of foul play, and he had left out several days' supply of food and water for his 2 cats. There were missing objects and clothing from both his apartment and off his desk, including writing materials and his novel manuscript. The strangest clue, however, came from Wiley's workplace typewriter. A forensic analysis of his typewriter ribbon found that he had typed a letter to a friend in which he stated that he was tired of his life and wanted to disappear, and that by the time she received the letter, he would be 2,500 miles away. Intriguingly, Wiley's friend never received the letter, and no copy of it was ever found. It did seem possible that Wiley could have faked his disappearance due to his recent divorce and planned to write full-time. However, there were too many anomalies around the mystery. Wiley never accessed any of his money in his bank account or police pension fund, and family members doubted that he would ever have abandoned his beloved car, which was a gift from his deceased brother. The case remains unsolved, and Wiley was declared legally dead in 1993. If he did in fact stage his own disappearance, then he has successfully avoided the radar for 35 years. Number 3. Davina Buff Jones. In 1999, Davina, or Dee Buff Jones, was a 33-year-old novice working for the police department at remote Bald Island. The paradise location on the southern tip of North Carolina's Cape Fear coast is home to the rich and powerful, and with a near zero crime rate. Jones was unhappy and seeking another job, as she was feeling picked on by her bosses and the affluent locals, and had also filed an harassment allegation. On October the 22nd, close to midnight, Jones radioed the dispatcher that she was out on patrol near the island's lighthouse with 3 people, saying, "Show me out with 3." She was then heard pleading with an unknown person to put their gun down before a piercing squeal cut the radio transmission. After not responding to repeated radio checks, Jones' body was found 50 minutes later lying next to a truck and with a gunshot wound in the back of her head, her gun resting near her right hand. Initially believed to be a homicide, Jones' death was officially deemed a suicide 2 weeks later. Corruption seems to have played a part in destroying vital evidence, with then Police Chief Karen Grasty being repeatedly overruled and told to go home and shut up. A prominent local family had planned a wedding to be held in the lighthouse on the day after Jones's passing, and the authorities demanded that the crime scene be cleaned. Blood splatters, car tire marks, and even a bloody palm print on the back of Jones' truck vanished when the area was hosed down. Jones' body was mishandled, initially left exposed for hours on the ferry dock, and later locked in an office. At 6 a.m. the next morning, 3 men were caught trying to flee the island by ferry. The 3 suspects had extensive criminal records, but they were quickly interrogated and then released. There had been rumours of massive drug transactions on the island for some months, and it's been suggested that Jones could have been killed while interrupting a drug deal. The wealthy Bullhead Island inhabitants were concerned that mention of drug activity would have a downward effect on local property values. After a long second investigation instigated by Jones' family, the implausible suicide ruling was finally overturned in December 2013, and the official cause of her death was changed to undetermined. However, the real events and circumstances of what happened to Davina Buff Jones remains a mystery. Number 2. Herbert Sherman. At around 2:30 a.m. on December the 3rd, 1967, policeman Herbert Sherman was on his regular routine patrol near the town of Ashland, Nebraska, when he observed a strange object at an intersection. 22-year-old Sherman later described it as a compact egg-shaped craft with flashing red lights floating at about 8 to 10 feet above the surface of the road. Making an electronic wailing sound, the UFO continued to rise and then vanished into the skies above his head. Sherman quickly returned to the police station and wrote in his logbook that he'd seen a flying saucer, but was surprised to discover that it was already 3 a.m, even though he had been only 10 minutes drive away. He was also experiencing a splitting headache and found a mysterious red welt on his neck. Soon after, Sherman was promoted to police chief, but was still suffering the crippling effects, which finally caused him to resign from his post. Sherman felt that the strangest aspect of his experience was that he had no memory of the missing 20 minutes. This and recurring bad dreams convinced him to undergo hypnotic regression. While under hypnosis, Sherman described seeing 3 short humanoid beings emerge from the flying saucer and approach his patrol car. He particularly noticed an emblem of a winged serpent on their uniforms. The beings brought him aboard their craft to communicate with him. They gave him a tour of the craft and claimed that they had been monitoring human activity and experimenting on us as part of a breeding study program. The message to Sherman was, "We want you to believe in us, but not too much." The aliens then returned Sherman to his car and erased his memory of the contact. It is still unknown if Sherman actually experienced this alien encounter, which had cost him his job due to the crippling headaches he received after the abduction. Due to constant harassment from the townsfolk, it also ended his marriage. However, a small piece of a mysterious molten metal was found at that intersection. Number 1. Doral Wheeler. On April the 19th, 1988, 3 armed attackers invaded the Suncrest, Washington home of Doral Wheeler, who had previously served as a police officer with the San Diego Police Department. Assaulting Wheeler, they forced him to write a note before tying him up, placing a pillow over his head and firing into it. Luckily, the bullet only grazed Wheeler's ear, so that he survived the attack. The most bizarre aspect of this event was the note that Wheeler was forced to write, apologising for a previous testimony against another San Diego policeman called Donovan Jacobs. Weirdly, one of the assailants had even called the San Diego Police Department from Wheeler's landline and asked for Jacobs. In 1985, Jacobs and his partner Thomas Riggs had pulled over an African-American driver called Sagon Penn for a traffic violation, leading to an argument in which Penn fatally shot Riggs, also wounding Jacobs. At the murder trial, Penn's attorney submitted that Jacobs had viciously beaten Penn and that the shooting was therefore self-defense. Doral Wheeler was called back from retirement to testify, confirmed that Jacobs did have a history of aggressive racism and brutalising minorities. Ultimately, Wheeler's testimony played a role in securing Penn's acquittal. Wheeler believed that the home invasion and attempting killing of himself was a vengeful plan devised by Jacobs or other members of the San Diego police force in retaliation for his whistleblowing. Wheeler also identified one of the assailants as possibly a former drug informant from the police department. Conversely, Jacobs and some other police officers believe that Wheeler is attention-seeking and fabricated the entire incident. In spite of a long-standing investigation, the mystery behind the alleged attack on Doral Wheeler has never been solved.